Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are well and everything is okay. During this course, we are going to discuss something about time value of money. As you know, Onur has told Daily the matter last week. I think you know something about the time value of money, and it's important on the basis of the evaluation of project feasibility projects, especially for investment projects. You have to take into consideration of the time value of the money. As you know, during our investment project, we have to determine the project investment period of the project. Maybe it takes about, depending on the project dimension, maybe it takes more than a few years. In the big project, for example, mining, metallurgical, or something like this, something similar projects, the investment period takes about 10 years. In some case, maybe 15 years. But generally, for example, a subway project, the investment of a subway project takes about 8 or 10 years. As you remember, the Turkish brand TOG car, the investment period of this project was about 6 years, I think. I remember it takes about 6 years. But the operational period of this project will be maybe more than 25 years, maybe 30 or 50 years, maybe, I don't know. For this reason, in this case, you have to consider the discounted cash flow of the project. You have to compare the investment cost, and you have to determine the incomes or profit during your operational period. It's very important. When you like to compare is this project positive or not, feasible or not, economical or not, you have to compare the investment expenses and profit, considering the time value of the time value of the money. It's very important for evaluation. In this case, there are a few parameters. We are going to discuss maybe using a few slides. Then we have a video. We have to listen for understand the concept. Today we are in the second stage of this course. We are going to discuss something about the implementation period of the projects. Yes, okay, the project is okay, it is feasible. We have to start to implement the total project. But we have to determine how long does it will be completed. 1 year, 3 years, 4 years. What kind of activities will be critical activities? How can we manage this kind of time, labor, and capital during our implementation period of the project? We have also another video dealing this kind of determining the critical path method of any project. We have to analyze the network of the structure break-even of the projects, etc. But first of all, I'd like to summarize what's it mean time value of money. As you know, we have opportunities, we have the risks, inflation because we always during the investment period we always have only expenses, but in the future we have some opportunities, maybe some risks and inflation. So for this reason, the time value of the money should be considered during our projects. As you know, the pound have now could be invested now, and we have to gain return or interest between the present and the future time. We could not use the pounds that will not be have until a future time. So this, we have a risk. We have to manage the risk also. There is a symbol, as you know, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, etc. Inflation, as you know, the inflation or interest rate is very important parameter for understand the system. As some you have do, they will very likely you more than an equal amount. You will not have until years in the future. The buying power of money decreasing over time due to the inflation. In this case, in this kind of evaluation, somebody used inflation as parameters. Somebody used the interest rate. It's not so important. Somebody says discount rate. All these kind of things are the same parameters. This chart should be meaningful for you in order to understand the system. As you know, this period is investment period. And this period is operational period. This is a present time. This is the future. Those are the years, depending on the conditions. Those are our profits. Those are our capital cost of the investment. The green one, net present value. The net present value, depending on the interest rate, maybe we can discuss something about the formula. It's not so important at the time. Depending on the we spent $500 for a project as investment, for example. The other one, what will be the net present of the considering the 8% of the interest rate or discount or inflation. As you know, depending on the time, it can be changed. You have to evaluate something like this. There are a few parameters that in order to understand the system. Those parameters are present value, future value, payment. We have 5 parameters, especially 5 parameters dealing the time value of the money parameter. The first one is present value. Second one is future value. The third, those one I could clear this and I write again. 5 main parameters. 1, present value. Second, future value. Third, interest rate or discount rate. Fourth, periods, years, it means. The fifth one is A, payment. It's a payment. The payment can be single or as a serial one. It's very important for understand system. Generally, the formula will be established on the basis of the four parameters. For example, this demonstration mean we know the future value of the money, we know the period, we know the interest rate, but we know the rate. We have to calculate the present value of the future value. This is a project formulation of the formula. As you've seen, we have the formula has to be established on the basis of the four parameters. But we have about 5 parameters. We have to formulate the formula, but in this demonstration, it means we know the future value of the money. We know how long does it take it, how many years we have to consider. R is the interest rate or discount rate or inflation rate in the future. You can accept something like this. It's not so important. This is then we establish a network cash flow of this demonstration. It means we know. Sorry. The problem. This is the first problem. Is this? We know future value of the money. We know, for example, 10 years, or we know R 10%, for example, will be inflation rate. Average rate of the 10 years will be 10%, for example. We can demonstrate it as like this. As I said you before, present, future. This demonstration is very important. Those are the periods. For example, R 10%, and 10 years, for example. F, for example, $100,000. This is 10 years, 10 years. We know that at the end of 10 years, we are going to gain $100,000. But under this condition, what will be the present value of this $100,000, we can say. What is the present value of this one? This is a formulation of the problem. This is a very important. You have to realize this kind of things. Okay. First of all, you have to summarize your project, your problem. Then you have to demonstrate it as a network, cash flow network. At this stage, as you know, we have to. There is a few formula. Maybe we can discuss something about it. This formula is dealing this one. This formula, for example, in this case, this case is not dealing this one. When we would like to, sorry, in this case, we don't know anything about the future value of the project. This is we know, but we know present value. We know we can R. I always use not I. I always use R as interest rate or discount rate or inflation rate. It's not so important. It will be better if you could not. For example, this is a second problem. This is a second type of the problem. We can summarize it as the second one. We can summarize it as F, future value of the money. We don't know anything about it, but we know the present value of the money. We know the period, and we know the rate. This is a formulation of this. Then we would like to in a graphic. It means we know its present value, but we don't know how much is it, how much it will be the future value under these conditions. Those are in single, as you know, single payment, only single payment. But in some cases, we have a serial payments. Maybe variable, or the payments could be variable or regular, depending on the condition. Maybe you can use a few formula. This is the first problem type. This is the second problem type. Generally, we have 5 or 6 problems dealing the matter. For example, maybe they can ask what will be the annual payment A. Maybe we can discuss the matter as serial one. This is the second formula. This is the second one. Sorry, I'd like to clear this one. This is the formula, the first formula. In this case, we have to determine the future value of the money. This is the first formula. Okay. Instead of I, you can use R. Okay. Instead of I, you can use R. Future value, present value is not so important. This is the second problem type. This is the second problem type. As you know, the present, we don't know the present value. We know the future value. We know the rates, etc. As you've seen, we have only 4 parameters. Okay, this is the second problem type. You can calculate using this formula. It's a single payment. This is another formula. Maybe we can discuss the matter later. Considering this, if the future value variable, you have to use this kind of formula as a serial formula. But if your payment is not is regular one, maybe we can use another formula is. But I think it's enough. I am going to discuss that. I'm going to give you the other formula next week. Maybe I can give you an Excel problem solving formula using Excel option. It will be helpful. Now I think it will be helpful to listen to the video dealing the time value of concept. It will be helpful for understand the main system. Okay. Let's listen this video. It will be helpful for understand the system. Then at the end of this video, maybe we can. I'd like to summarize the problem. Then maybe we can start to the critical path method depending on our time. I don't know at this time, but it will be helpful to understand the system for next week. It will be helpful.
Time value of money affects all aspects of business in every industry. The reason why we have the time value of is due to interest. Because of interest, the value of
Is it comfortable or not?
or any time in the future for that matter. This is because a dollar today can earn interest over the next 5 years and would therefore be worth more than the dollar in the future that is being compared to. In this time value of money lesson, we will go over simple interest, compound interest, future value, annuities,
Thank you, Ömer. Thank you very much.
Compounding interest, future value of annuities, present value of annuities, and perpetuities. So what is simple interest? Interest can be thought of as rent to borrow money. You can either receive interest or rent when you lend out money, or you can pay interest or rent when you borrow money.
Welcome to Brescia, a land that lies between the most beautiful lakes of northern Italy, the alpine foothills of Lombardy, and the stunning hills of Franciacorta. Halfway between Milan and Venice, Brescia can easily be reached from all of Italy and the main European cities. Rich in tradition, art and history, Brescia will be the Italian capital of culture in 2023, with 3 World Heritage Sites, including rock engraving art in Valle Camonica, the first site to be recognized in Italy, as well as museums, castles and...
Sorry. It's not so comfortable, I think. Yeah? I could not manage it.
Simple interest is when the interest received or paid is based solely on the amount of money that was initially invested. So if you invested $100 and it earned simple interest at an annual rate of 10% for 5 years, then your investment would earn $10 each year for the next 5 years, totaling in $50 in interest.
Yes.
The formula to solve the interest rate is the initial investment times 1 plus the interest rate times the number of periods that the investment will be held for. Therefore, if we invest $100 in an account for 5 years that earns 10% simple interest per year, then we would have $150 in 5 years. The ending balance in 5 years would consist of our initial $100 investment and $50 in over the 5-year period. Our formula would be 100 times 1 plus the interest rate of 10% times 5 years, which is 5 periods. What is compound interest? Compound interest is much different than simple interest. Compound interest is the kind of interest you would like to receive in an investment, but definitely not the kind of interest that you want to pay. Why? Because the interest rate is based on the balance of the investment when it is calculated, not just the initial investment. What this means is that interest is being earned on both the investment and interest is being earned on the previous period's interest. This may be easier to understand with an example. Let's say you invested $100 for 5 years at a compounding interest rate of 10%. At the end of this first year, your investment would be worth $110 because it earned 10% interest on $100. At the end of the second year, your investment would be worth $121. This means that it earned $11 in interest the second year, which is different from the $10 in interest it earned in the first year. Why? Because the second year, your investment earned 10% interest on the initial investment and 10% interest on the $10 interest earned in the first year. The easiest way to understand the compounding interest concept is to understand that interest is being earned on the initial investment and the interest earned in previous periods. The best way to calculate what an investment earning compound interest will be worth at some point in the future is to use the future value formula. The future value formula is future value equals present value times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power.
Buron IPL ile güzellik salonuna gitmeden tüylerinizden kurtulun. Bastırın ve kaydırın. Kalıcı pürüzsüzlük kolay. Gözle görünür pürüzsüzlük. Güzellik rutinime hoş geldin IPL. Brown IPL ile 1 yıla kadar pürüzsüz cilt.
Kıvamına ayrı, tadına ayrı hayranım.
So for our investment, we would calculate the future value of $100 earning 10% interest over a 5-year period. Notice that our investment of $100 will be worth $161.05 in 5 years. This means that it earned $61 in interest, more in interest than if it earned simple interest. Now you can see why compound interest is the kind of interest that you want to receive, but not the kind of interest you want to pay. So what is future value? Future value is what a dollar today will be worth in the future. This is because of interest that the dollar can earn over time, therefore making it more valuable in the future. If someone offered to give you $100 today or $100 in the future, you would obviously take the $100 today. Why? Because even if you didn't need the $100 today and you knew that you would need it in the future, you could simply invest it and earn interest over that year. Then a year from now, when you did need the money, you could cash out and have the $100 plus any interest that it earned. So if it earned 10% interest, your $100 today would be worth $110 1 year in the future. This means in theory that the future value of money is always worth more. Again, the future value formula is future value equals present value times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power. Suppose you invested $1,000 in an investment that was expected to earn 10% annual interest for the next 10 years. What would the future value of your investment be worth in 10 years? Let's plug our figures into the future value formula to find out. We do $1,000 times 1 plus 0.1 to the 10th power, giving us a future value of $2,593.74. This would mean that $1,000 today, the future value of $1,000 is $2,593.74. What is an annuity? An annuity is a series of equal payments that are either paid to you or paid from you. Annuities can be cash flows, paid such as monthly rent payments, car payments, or they can be money received such as semi-annual coupon payments from a bond. Just remember, for a series of cash flows to be considered an annuity, the cash flows need to be equal. An annuity due is when a payment is made at the beginning of the payment period, rent for example, where you're usually required to pay at the first of every month. An ordinary annuity is a payment that is paid or received at the end of the period. An example of an ordinary annuity would be a coupon payment made from bonds. Usually bonds will make semi-annual coupon payments at the end of every 6 months. What is present value? Present value is today's value of money from some point in the future. For example, $100 received a year from today is worth less than $100 received today. This is because of interest earned over time. For example, if we invested $90.91 in a fund that earned 10% interest, then our $90.91 would be worth about $100 1 year in the future. This means that according to an available 10% interest rate, the present value of $100 a year from today is worth $90.91 today. The present value formula for a lump sum of money in the future is shown here. The interest rate is also known as the discount rate, since you will be discounting the future sum of money by the interest rate.
Online ödeme alan bir marka düşünelim. Bu
Sorry, this video is not so comfortable. For this reason, I have to change it. Maybe we can select another one. I'd like to summarize what shall we do. As you know, during your project, during your investment project, we have only this kind of chart. Those are our periods. It's not so important. During our project, considering your investment period, in some cases, your investment period of your project was 2 years. In some project, it was 1 year. In some projects, maybe, for example, in hotel project, touristical project format, it takes about more than 4 years, for example. During this period, you always have to pay. But at the end of this period, you can start to the project operational period of the project, service period of the project. During this period, as you know, investment period. For example, we always paid. This is a payment. Those under the A. We can say A. Payment or annuity, the same thing. It's not important. It's a fixed and regular payments. During this period, we paid $10 million. For example, it means total during this period we spent $30 million. Okay. At the end of this investment, when we start to do produce the goods or items, and we start to sell them, and it means that during this period we have expenditures per year, and we have also incomes. But difference between the incomes and expenditures, it means our profit. For example, during this period we gain standard profits. During this period, it was standard. It was fixed period. For example, during this period, the period was about, for example, 55 years. 1, 2, 3, 58. We can say 58 years. It means the operational period takes about 55 years. Every year, our profit was about, let's accept that, $5 million, for example. This is our project, cash flow of our project, investment project. During 3 years, it means our project investment time takes about 3 years. But at the end of the third years, we can start to the operational period. During the operational period, that takes 25 years. We always gains $5 million profit. We make $3 million profit. The question is this. Is this project feasible or not? Is this project feasible or not? Feasible or not? What shall we do? How can we calculate if there isn't any inflation, if we didn't take into consideration the rate of discount rate or inflation rate, maybe you can it will be easy to calculate it during for example during the 55 years when we make $3 million per year. It means we are going to gain $75 million. Yes, okay. During this period, we spent $30 million. It means that the project will be rentable. There is no problem. In this case, we always we know that always we are encountered to the inflation. We have to take into consideration the interest rate and discount, and we have to calculate the net present value of the project, because we always spend during 3 years, but we have a risk as the opportunity we can make profit, but we have a risk also. For this reason, we have to consider the inflation rate or interest rate, etc. Then we have to calculate the net present value of the project. Net present value of the project. It means net present value of profit, difference between the profit, net present value of the project, and net present value of investment. Net present value of this expenditures, and net present value of the payments or end use. In this demonstration, this means A, payments. Payment A. This is a serial of the A. We have to calculate using these opportunities, and we have to calculate the related, considering the related formula. But when in some cases it could not be a fixed amount, maybe it will be difference A1, A2, etc. For this reason, we have to calculate in another using some table options. But we have to understand the system. Under these conditions, you have to calculate your project net present value of your project. If the net present value of the project is positive, if net present value greater than 0, it means your project will be feasible. Otherwise, if it is less than 0, it is not feasible. You could not go on. Using this opportunity, we can compare all kind of the things. For example, we can say A. Maybe I can clear it. The net present value of the project equal to cumulative net present value of A minus net present value of interest, the cumulative ones. You have to analyze if it is the cumulative ones. You have to analyze if it is bigger than 0, it means go on. You can make the decision of your project. Yes, I think it's enough. Then I'm going to share the related formula. How can we calculate using this parameters? As I said you before, we have 5 parameters. We can use those ones. Maybe we can. I'd like to summarize again. I'd like to summarize it again. When we encounter to the time value of the money problems, we have 5 main parameters. Generally, we are interested with 4 ones. We can use 4 ones. Generally, they give us will be given 3 ones. Then we have to calculate the last one. When, for example, when we summarize the problem as A, N, R. This is another problem. This is the third one. This is the third type of problem. We have to calculate this one. It means we have to calculate this problem. It means that the demonstration of the graphic demonstration, the chart, is similar to this one. We know the periods, for example, 10 years. For example, 10%. For example, in our problem, for example, $1 million. It means, how can we demonstrate it? 10 years. We know 3 million. The same. We don't know what will be the present value of this, the sum of these projects. We have to discount this one, all of them. We have to calculate it, and we have to determine the cumulative of this one. This is another case, another problem type that we have to calculate. In previous, during your project, we have it's very important for you because during your project, operational life of your project, you will make money, make profit. Maybe your profit will be fixed amount, regular one. Then you have to calculate the present value of this project. This is another. Then another one, for example, what will the future value of this project? For example, F, A, R, N. we have to calculate what will be the cumulative amount of this kind of things. We have to determine. This is another. This is the fourth one. This is the fourth one. We have two ones for the three ones formula. Maybe we can discuss the matter next week. Another formula, maybe we can the concept. I'd like to share the concept. A now we have to calculate the payment amount of the payment. We know, for example, we know $10 million. We know 10%, 5%, for example, no problem. 20 years, for example. The demonstration of this problem is like this. We know 10 million, 20 years. We don't know what will be standard, the amount of the A. We have to solve this one. This is the fifth one, the fifth problem. The other one, maybe A, F, R, N. Similar this chart. At the end of 20 years, for example, we know $10 million, for example, $10 million. What will be A? What will the amount A? What will be A? What will the amount A? This is serial of payment. Payment serial. Regular payment amount. And we have to calculate that there are a few formula. I'll share this kind of formula next week with you. Maybe you can evaluate your project considering this kind of project summarizing system. I think everything's clear. Do you have any question? I don't know. It will be helpful for understand the system. But today I'd like to share another video because we are going to discuss the matter next week, or we have only, I think we have only 2 or 3 weeks for further course, for further concept. The further concept will be the project implementation period of the project. For this season, you have to determine what kind of method we have to use for project management during the investment period. What will be the complement, the finish time? What will be the critical path of the project? What will be our early starting point of the project? What will be the latest finish time of the project? What kind of activities will be critical during your project. For example, we have in any time of the project, during any time of the project, this is the timetable. For example, this is the 30th day of week of the project. In this case, we have lots of activities. Lots of activities can be started at this time. For example, during the construction of the building, we are coming at the 30th week of the project. We have lots of activities that can be started. It can be started, but we don't know. We haven't got enough labor. We haven't got enough time. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In this case, 8. In this time of the project, you are the project manager. For example, you have to decide something. You haven't got enough resources, especially your main resource are time. The main resources: time, labor requirement, equipment, and capital. For example, those are you manage this kind of things during your project. But we are interested with the labor, for example. There is a limitation of the labor. We haven't got enough labor for every activity. Every activity needs 5 people, for example. 5 people. Those are the activities. Every activity needs 5 people. It means 8 multiply 5. We need 40 people. In this time, we need 40 people. But we haven't got enough labor. There is a restriction, labor restriction. We have only 20. We have only 20 labor. We have 21. What shall we do in this case? What shall we do? In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 8 activity, but we haven't got enough people, enough employer. For this reason, we have to postpone some activities. Is that right? You could not start some activities have to be postponed, but we wonder which one is critical one. When we haven't postponed it, because when we postpone it, maybe the whole project will be delayed. We have to consider for this reason we have to make a decision. What shall we do during this period? It's a problem for the management program of the investment periods. Is that right? We have to calculate the earliest finish time of the whole project. We have to calculate the latest finish time of the project. We have to determine the earliest starting. For example, we have to determine the early start time of this any activity. We have to determine the earliest finish time of the activity. We have to determine the latest starting time of the activity, latest finish time of the activity. Using this kind of things, we have to calculate the whole finish time of the project. It's very important for implementation of the project on site. For this reason, you have to determine the breakdown of the structure breakdown of the activities. You have to determine your using your experience. You have to use some experts. There are a few methods. One of them is Gantt chart diagram. It's easy. Maybe you can guess it. The second one is critical path method. This is a very important method. There are a few softwares dealing the matter. But there are another one, project evaluation and review technique. We have to determine this kind of things. There are a few software, as I said you before. For example, Microsoft Project, one of them. Primavera, another one. There are a few ones you can use maybe in the future, but you have to take courses. They matter. It's not so easy. It takes about more than 4 months in order to understand the system to using this kind of softwares. But I'd like to share the principle of the method. It's very important, classical way. Otherwise, you could not manage the softwares, etc. The first one is Gantt diagram. The second one, critical path method. The third one, project evaluation and review technique. This is those one, but the most important one is the critical path method. The path consists of the CPM. Difference between the CPM and path. The path project will be the new project. For example, construction of a building in a space, for example, because it will be the first time. We don't know what will be the duration of any activities during the construction. We haven't got enough knowledge dealing with it. But in regular projects, CPM is enough. The difference between we have to estimate the time of duration of the whole activities using some statistical methods. But we have to learn, especially the CPM method is very important for understand the system. Now, I think we have enough time. Let's listen a video. I don't know it will be helpful or not. I don't know it will be helpful or not. For a short, it takes about half an hour. Let's try to listen it. It will be helpful for understand the concept of the critical path method. It's very, as I said you before, it's very important for understand the project management during implementation of the investment projects.
Sense of how those calculations took place. And so as I got these floats in, you can follow through and you can see where the critical is following on your project. So we have what I think we've got 11 activities on this. Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson and welcome to Tools, Techniques, and Mental Models for Success series. In this series, we're looking at the various tools and mental models that will assist you in being more successful in running your business, running your projects, and personal development. Today, we're going to be discussing the critical path method. Critical path method is an essential element to project management. If you like, it's kind of the engine that kind of runs projects. It's the methodology that's used to calculate the length of projects, and it's a well-known methodology that's very, very, very commonplace. So it's not one that's often ignored. And so I personally believe to be successful in running projects, it's good to know how the underpinnings of the critical path method works. Particularly, how does it get calculated? How do they come up with these numbers? Whatever project management software you're using, how is that coming up with the length of time of your projects? And in my training and development over the years with various companies and project managers and site superintendents, I'm always kind of taken aback by how many people really don't know how it's actually calculated. And it's not a complicated process, really, once you get used to it. It's not that you're ever really going to sit down and calculate it by hand, but whatever software system that you're using to make the connections, it's doing the calculations in the background. And if you really don't know how the calculations are being made, it's very easy to make a mistake and not recognize the mistake is there. So I think as a good starting point, it's good to have just a general understanding of how the calculations are made. I often say project management, planning and scheduling of projects is very much like estimating of projects. You know, you're doing a lot of calculations, and if you make one little mistake, it can really throw off things quite substantially. Like if you're estimating and you have one extra zero in a cell or one less zero in a cell, it really means a big difference in your project. So the same thing kind of goes with scheduling projects and critical path method calculations. If you have an extra zero in a duration or you make a mistake with a predecessor, that can have a substantial impact on your ability to run projects. And this is part one of a series that we'll talk about with the critical path, how it's actually calculated, what it is, and others in this series of, well, how does that convert to like a Gantt chart or a bar chart? And then, well, what does that really mean? Because everything changes all the time. And so what does that mean with updating our projects and we're learning where we're at? And then what does that mean with getting ourselves back on track so that we can drive ourselves towards our original goals or communicate if we can't reach those goals in the expected time that we originally understood that to be. So there's actually a whole wealth of information that's involved in this, but I think a good starting point today is just to get a handle on what the critical path is all about. And if you're just starting to learn about project management, this is a pretty good introduction to how it's actually calculated. So just to give you a little bit of a historical context, the timeline of project management, projects have big mammoth projects go back thousands of years. You know, the pyramids were built more than 4,600 years ago. Of course, they weren't using modern project management processes, and they weren't under as tight a timeline typically as a lot of our projects are today. And of course, when we talk about some of the constraints, goals as far as safety were concerned were not very commonplace, and unfortunately a lot of moral and ethical issues would have been involved as well during those time periods that we avoid today, and that we take care to ensure that we're meeting all of the government regulatory requirements. A more recent project, although not that recent, goes back to the Great Depression, and it would be a good example is the Hoover Dam. If you ever get a chance to go out to Las Vegas, there's usually day trips that you can take from Las Vegas out to the Hoover Dam. I took this trip a little while ago, and it's quite the experience going through the Hoover Dam and the process that they went into building it. But even the Hoover Dam, it didn't use the critical path method to sort of develop the schedule for it. It was under very tight timelines that used what we call Gantt charts, or what you'd better known as bar charts, as the foundation. I think if you search online, you can probably find some of the original bar charts for the Hoover Dam. And so at that time, it was considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. Mammoth project built during the Depression, using government money to try to get people to work, but also to have a great foundation in being able to conserve and redirect water, and at the same time produce energy through hydroelectric power generation. So Mammoth project, very interesting project, developed using bar charts from that perspective. Was not very safe either. We hadn't progressed that much even in that time. I think the non-official deaths on the project was well over 400 people on that project, actually building it, that perished. I think the official number at the time was much lower, but that's more the way that they were reporting things. So you wouldn't be able to do that today, not in North America anyways, and get away with that from that perspective. So we have to run our projects much more safely, and there's a lot more technology available to us today. So the critical path method wasn't developed till the 1950s. So, you know, a good 20 years or more after the Hoover Dam was built. There was kind of two methodologies that were kind of developed almost at the same time. One is PERT, evaluation review technique, very interesting scheduling network format that sort of put some factors, excuse me, regarding likelihood or possibility, so the most optimistic and pessimistic views. We'll one in another session, but focusing in on the critical, all of the activities that are involved in the project, connecting them together to form a network. So that means, you know, what must happen for me to start the next activity? So if I'm in the next activity, what must have been completed? So looking back, what would be the predecessor? Or having completed that activity, what would be the successor? What comes next? What can I do at the same time? Can I have activities that wait a period of time? Maybe I've got something to wait for in between one activity or another. Or can I have activities overlap each other? So we put them all together in this network. And that whole process of putting together the network, which involves a number of factors more than we'll discuss today, is putting together the critical path. Because if we figure out all the activities we need to do for the project, and we gather up durations of how long they're going to take, and we put them in the proper sequencing or schedule logic, as we would use the terminology, then at the end of that, we should be able to tell how long our project is going to take. And some activities in that network, if they take longer, our project will take longer. Notice I said some activities, not all activities. Some activities will have what we call float or slack. That means they've got some flexibility before they start to push the project date longer. And what's helpful with that is if we have all that information, then we can see when things change on our projects, because no matter what, things will change on our projects. And I think in one of our earlier videos, we mentioned Eisenhower and the Eisenhower matrix, but he also has that phrase, which is plans are nothing, planning is everything, which means things change and we have to be able to redevelop and be agile and be able to change our plans so that we can reconfigure them to get ourselves back on track. Well, if we developed a network, we can see when something is delayed, is that going to impact our project? If it's got lots of float, maybe it won't impact our project. But if it's on the critical path, we know it will. And so once that happens, then we can start thinking about, all right, well, that's already delayed us. Then how do we get the time back? And we'll look at that in one of the further parts. But for now, as I said, we want to focus in on how is the actual critical path calculated. And as I mentioned, it's just keep thinking it's the longest path through this complete network of activities that you put into place. And if an activity on the critical path takes longer, the project will take longer. If an activity on the critical path is shorter, the project may be shorter, because you could have two critical paths. So you shorten one, it doesn't necessarily shorten your project. If you only have one critical path, it would shorten your project up until something else becomes critical. So you don't always win when you shorten one single critical path, depends how the project is laid out. But if you understand how critical paths are developed and how they're calculated, it helps you to be able to understand how your project is going. So I've got in these next 2 or 3 slides a bunch of information here, and you know, this being YouTube, you can always just sort of freeze your screen, and if you want to read through that, you can kind of get a good idea of it. To be sure, we want to have a work breakdown structure, and we'll talk about that in another session. A work breakdown structure is taking a very large project and breaking it down into sections. It helps us to ensure that we don't miss key areas of work. And from the lowest level, once you got the headings, the areas of work, so like in a construction project, you might have the overall project, and then you might have pre-construction work, construction work as an example of headings, and in pre-construction you'd have under that all the things you need to do to get ready for the construction. And under construction, of course, we'd have the construction work, and under construction we might have things like substructure and superstructure and exterior envelope and building systems. So we would be breaking it down into smaller and smaller components until we actually get it all the way down to lowest level activities. So WBS helps to make sure we don't miss stuff. At the lowest level of activities, that's where the network is really formed. Activities to activities. I got to finish this before I start that. You know, it's sort of right down at the lowest level. That's where the actual network is taking place. And point number 3, I got draw a diagram. Well, when you're using a software program, you don't have to draw a diagram. And as I mentioned from the historical aspect of you know, Remington Rand and how basically the critical path was developed. Also, the Polaris missile project, I believe, was one of the earlier critical path projects. It was really developed because these are mammoth projects and they're requiring thousands and thousands of activities. And how are we going to track this and have any idea what we're doing? Critical path was one methodology that could take advantage of computer systems. And of course, we know over the years, going from computer systems back then that probably took, you know, a whole office just to have the computers, to being able to have, you know, something on your iPad that you can actually run a project from. Becomes much easier. Now you can plan any kind of project just using simple software programs, of which there's lots of them out there. And I tend to use Microsoft Project in a lot of my explanations, but I'm not wedded to any one software system. They're kind of the engine that's running it. So scheduling is scheduling. It's just trying to understand what a particular software system can do for you. But the fundamentals we're talking about today doesn't really matter if it's Microsoft Project, Primavera P6, Merlin, a whole host of other different kind of scheduling softwares that are out there or soon to be out there. So really, the calculation process is using some simple algorithms, and it's really broken down into 2 major areas. You do what we call a forward pass and a backward pass to do the calculations. And really, if I want to put it simply, it's just adding and subtracting. It's not rocket science. Adding and subtracting, but there's a definite process that's involved. So I've got this again, rules to follow when calculating the critical path. And again, I don't want to just read these off because I don't think it makes much sense. But if you want later, maybe when you look through the video and you might, I'm not quite getting it, you might want to come back to this, freeze it, and just sort of look through it. And if you watch the video all the way through, you'll see how this actually works, because I've animated a few things in PowerPoint to try to make it a little bit easier to understand, because I find if you sort of sit and just read this, it's a little bit tricky or monotonous. So I'm going to do 2 cases today. One a fairly quick one just to get the, you know, the little gray cells thinking about things, and the other one just to walk you really step by step through it. But let's say we have a few activities. This would probably be within a bigger project, but let's just go with this. So we're going to put shingles on our roof. We're going to do a bunch of building systems rough-ins. We're going to have inspections and install the insulation. And so they're numbered, and really any kind of scheduling program and CPM, it really works like a database program. You have different tables, different things communicating to each other. So we want to reference it with some sort of numbering system. And we're going to have timelines. So how long do we expect these activities to take? And so let's say these are days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 4 days, 2 days, etc. And the predecessor is what must happen before something else happens. There's, you know, when you get into scheduling software, if you've got all the predecessors laid out, you'd also have the successors. So that's another column. It's just how you're looking at activity. Predecessor means I'm looking back. Successor means what's coming next when I finish this. So if I have shingle roof, what would be my successor in this case would be electrical rough-in, HVAC rough-in, and plumbing rough-in. If I'm at the electrical rough-in, what must be done before I start it? Well, I'm saying in this case, I want the roof shingled, maybe so moisture doesn't get into where I'm working and that sort of thing. So that's sort of laying that out. And if you laid it out, the actual network that we've been talking about is these nodes or boxes. We call them nodes, and this is what we call an activity on node network, which is how most scheduling software does this today. There used to be what they called an activity on arrow, where the activities were actually named on the arrows instead of the boxes. But this is actually a much easier way for software programs to do it. Doesn't change any of the calculations, how they're done really. It's just a different format that's easier to display. And I've got a little box here which has the abbreviations: early start and early finish, and late start and late finish. And we do a forward pass calculation. So that's starting from the beginning and working our way right to the end. And so the earliest we can start, I want you to just think of start and early finish is like, I plan to start now and I plan to finish whenever. So it's just sort of when I plan to start and when I plan to finish. Late finish and late start is what's the latest I can finish and what's the latest that I can start given the information that I've provided. And you'll see in some cases late start and early start, they're the same thing. And if they are the same thing, then that means that activity is on the critical path. But the way the software works is it has to do the forward pass before it does the backward pass. So that means you start at the beginning, you work your way to the end. So you start here and you work your way through the network to get at the end of the project. If we're following that process, we would basically have our early start is 0. That would be now. Our duration is 5 days. And so 0 plus 5 is 5. That would be our early finish. And then our early finish becomes the early start. And when you have activities that diverge out, then it's pretty easy. We just plug in the 5 into all 3 of them. And then we continue, we do the addition, 5 plus 6. So early start plus duration equals early finish. And so that would be 11. 5 plus 6 is 11. 5 plus 7 is 12. 5 plus 4 is 9. Now, all 3 of these activities are merging in here. So that means that for inspections, we have electrical rough-in, HVAC rough-in, and plumbing rough-in as predecessors, right? So when they merge in, we got to decide which number do we take of the early finishes. Well, we're saying that in this case, we're saying that all of these need to be done before we start inspections. That may or may not be true in the real world, but the way I've laid it out here is that they all have to be done before we start inspections. So we would take then, well, what do you think it would be? Just think about that. Which one would you go for? I've got to have them all done. So this is saying it would have to be, this is going to finish at the end of day 11. This is going to finish at the end of day 12, and this is going to finish at the end of day 9. So we would have to go with the longest one, which would be 12. So 12 goes into there. Then we have 12 plus 2 is 14. Early finish here, that becomes the early start over there. 14 plus 4 gives us 18. That means this project is going to take 18 days to complete, following the way we plan this to be. Okay, so that's following the forward pass. The backward pass, now we just go from the end and we work our way backwards. So going forward was a lot of addition. Going backward is just subtraction. So we're going to take our late finish minus 4. That gives us our late start, which is 14. So now we know that we're basically, our late start is 14. This late start is going to move over here. Late start becomes the late finish working backwards. 14 minus 2 is going to give us 12. And now when they again diverge outward, that means we can take that 12 and we can plug it in here, here, and here. So that 12 moves over to there. 12 minus 4 is going to be 8. 12 minus 7 is going to be 5. And 12 minus 6 is going to be 6. So we're now at this stage, and if we want to go backwards, well, then the simple thing for us to do is to look at the smallest number. Remember when we went forward and they merged together, we went with the larger number. Now we're going in reverse, so we use the smaller number. So in this particular case, we're going to be using the number 5 because it is the smallest number, and 5 minus 5 equals 0. It has to equal 0 or we made a mistake. So if we went all the way forward and we went back and we ended up with, I don't know, 3, somewhere we've made a mistake. So if you've done everything right, it would be at 0 at the end. And the next step would then be to calculate the float for each activity. So if we subtract the early finish from the late finish, and we would have 5 minus 5, that would give us 0 float here. 12 minus 11 would give us 1, or 6 minus 5. So you can subtract the starts or the finishes, but it should give you the same number. If it doesn't for some reason, you made a mistake somewhere along the line. So we've got 0, we've got 1, we've got 12 minus 12, 0, or we've got here we've got 12 minus 9, 3, or 8 minus 5, 3. So 3 days float here. That means you got 3 days of flexibility of this activity. Go over here and kind of looking at it, you kind of know intuitively then this should be on the critical path, this should be on the critical path, because there's not other things going on at the time. The bigger your project is, the more things you have going simultaneously, the more balls you have in the air. This way you can sort of see where you've got flexibility. That's the beauty of having the critical path. You know which activities you don't have flexibility on and which ones you do. It helps you to prioritize your efforts. It helps you to focus in on that 20% of activities that you deem to be in jeopardy that could delay your project, etc., using the Pareto principle. So we can see this has 0 and this has 0. So critical path in this case moves straight through here, and these two activities have float. This one has 3 days of float. So that means plumbing rough-in, if it took 3 days longer to complete, so I've got a duration of 4 days. If it took 7 days, you know what? This would be critical and that would be critical. They'd both be critical. If this took 5 days longer, so that this this has right now, let's see, what did we say it has? 3 days of float. So we said 3 days longer, that would make this critical along with this critical. If this took 4 days longer, in other words, if it had a duration of 8 days, then this would be critical, and rough-in HVAC would have 1 day of float. So it tells you where your flexibility is. And we know on projects things change when we actually start doing them. So it's nice to see that, and it would show and calculate through the whole project the impact of these changes that are happening. And it becomes very important in project management to know what impacts are having on the project and who caused those impacts, because perhaps you didn't cause the impact and it's some external force, so you could potentially get relief in time or money, depending on what the circumstances are. So that calculation I just did is just over here in this chart. So if you're wondering where these numbers come from, it's the difference between the finishes or the difference between the starts, and that's where the float is. And wherever you've got zero float, it's critical. So that gives you a good idea. What I want to do is now run through another example, and we'll keep this little formula up here. We're going to do the forward pass. We've got this little deck that's being built, and we're going to excavate. We're going to put sonotubes, basically the round tubes for the concrete to support the foundation. That'll be the foundation for the deck. We're going to frame the deck, rough in electrical, rough in for gas barbecue. It's nice summertime out. Install sprinklers, frame the stairs, install the decking. And you can see these are the predecessors. So that's the relationships. So based on how you would want to have this set up, you would develop the activities in these boxes. You can see the ID numbers are given based on how it's set up. And so we're not doing number one. That's more of a work breakdown structure heading for the whole project. So we're starting in with number 2. And ES, early start, early finish. That's what we're going to do on the forward pass. So we're going to run that through, and we're going to put all these boxes in a format that would make sense based on what we've got listed here, because we can see some things are running a certain way. And then we're going to connect all the arrows for the activities, which is connecting up the predecessors based on what's said. I've actually got one missing. That would be what we call an open end. It's not connected, and it needs to be connected. So I think that's this one over here, which needs to connect grade and landscaping to install sprinklers. So that one needs to connect there. So it doesn't mean it connects here, right? It needs to connect where it says, where it makes sense to, and maybe because we're grading and landscaping all around, that's not going underneath the deck, so it's kind of kept separate on our layout for the project. So right now, we haven't figured out exactly, well, where is the critical path? Let's start. And so where we would start is from now, and where now is 0, and add 3 to it, which is the duration, 3 days. So that gives us an early finish of 3 days. So the early start is 0, duration is 3, and the early finish ends up being 3 days. Now, for those of you studying the PMP, Project Management Professional certification, I believe in their certification in the actual documents, I don't believe I know, that they start with 1. And they use that as the starting point. And it just throws the way the numbers are off by a little bit. This is a easier way to do the calculations. And this way of doing the calculations actually works better if you're having to do the PMP test, which is a lot of questions, and they're forced into a very tight timeline. So you got to be very quick if you got to make calculations with it. So this methodology is actually the best methodology to use in understanding and being able to calculate it out, in my opinion. So it really start with 0, but if it doesn't really change the way the calculations are done, I think it's just easier to teach and easier to follow. So 0 plus 3 days, 3, and then the next step is that early finish is going to become the early start, and then so that 3 moves over, 3 plus 1 becomes 4. And then the same thing happens, that 4 goes over here, and then 4 plus 4 becomes 8. And then we've got the 8. Well, like I said, you can move that into these 4 areas, so that basically it moves over here, it moves over there, it moves down here, and it moves over from the early finish to the early start over here. Okay, so those all have clicked in and moved over to those spots, so it's very quick. We can move them when they're diverging outward. They're diverging outward, very quick to put them in, and then we just got to do some adding. 8 plus 2 is 10, 8 plus 2 is 10, 8 plus 6 is 14, 8 plus 1 is 9, right? So that should fill in those numbers. And so then the next thing is we've got to put in our early starts, and now they're merging inward. So we have to look at our early finishes for the activities that are merging inward. So one of the things I really want to note is it's only this activity. this activity and this one down here that's merging into this box. So we should ignore this one for now. All right, so that means if we look at this, we've got an early finish of 10, we've got an early finish of 10, and we got an early finish of 9. So in this case, we should use the number 10, which will take us over there. 10 plus 2 is going to give us 12. Okay, so we got 10 plus 2 is 12, and so 10 plus 2 is 12. Now we can move this one here. 12 should be going over at this point, and so it's going to go over to here. So 12 plus 1, sorry, we're going to have 12, and then we're going to go 12 plus 1 is going to give us our early finish. And so we've got 13. And now we got to come back and we got to look at this one, because now this is merging into, we've got our sprinklers and we've got our install railing, and they're moving into the grade and landscaping activity. So in this particular case, we are going to take the larger number, and the larger number in this particular case is 14. So of those two, 13 and 14, 14 was the larger number. 14 plus 5 is going to give us 19, and then 19 is going to come over here, and we're going to have 19. This is a milestone, which is basically just saying it's finished. So 19 plus 0, it's going to be 19. So we know our project now is going to take 19 days to complete, 19 working days to complete. And so that means that when we get over here, these two will be plugged in at 19.2. This is for sure on the critical path. The last activity will be on the critical path, that's a for sure. And then we can do our backward pass. And the backward pass is just working our way backwards. So we're now late. That's going to become the late finish. All right. So we're going to have a late start is going to become, sorry, the late start is going to become the late finish over here. And so that becomes 19. And then we're going to do some subtracting. 19 minus 5, that's going to give us 14. So our late finish minus our duration gives us our late start. Late finish minus duration gives us our late start. And then our late start equals the late finish of the predecessor activity. So we're going to basically move this here, and that's going to be equal our late finish over there. So that's going to continue that process through. So we got 14 minus 1, that's going to give us 13, and then we're going to have 13 minus, that becomes our late finish. 13 minus 2 is going to give us 11. So where we've got 11 here, we can now plug that in because they're diverging. Just like we did with the forward pass, we can plug that 11 into here, we can plug it into here, and we can plug it into there. So we got 3 spots it can go, which will make things a little bit easier. And we can do the math on that. 11 minus 2 gives us 9. Move it into here. It's going to be similar. 11 minus 2 is 9. And don't forget the bottom one there where it links up. And that's going to be 11 minus 1. And that's going to give us 10. Now we can't forget this one. So we'll do this one as well. So we've got over here 14. 14 is the late finish. And we got 14 minus 6 is going to give us 8. So now they're all merging inward, going in the backward pass. You remember the forward pass? What did we take? In the forward pass, we took the larger number. In the backward pass, take the smaller number. The forward pass, we were waiting for the longest activity to complete. This reverses itself when we do the backward pass. So we have to look up through here, and we have to see when we're looking through here of the activities, which one that we're going to take. We're going to take the smaller number. So we've got 9, 9, we've got 8, and we've got 10. So we're going to take the 8. The smaller number, 8 minus 4, that's going to give us 4. 4 is going to move into late finish. 4 minus 1 is going to give us 3. The 3 is going to move over here. And 3 minus 3 is going to give us 0. All right, so we've just done the calculation of the forward pass, the backward pass. It did equal 0. If it didn't equal 0, we would have a problem. It does equal 0, so we did it correctly. So now what we'd want to do is figure out, well, what is the critical path in this example? If you went by my previous example, you might have thought, okay, it's going to just run straight through. Well, that's not true in this particular case. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract the finishes or the starts. And so in this case, we can see that's 0, 4 minus 4, 3 minus 3, 0, 8 minus 8, 4 minus 4, that's 0. So that's looking like it's a critical path. And then we could do these up here. 11 minus 10, that's 1. That's got float, that activity. This has float, 1. This one's 0. So that means that's going to be on the critical path. 14 minus 14 or 8 minus 8. And down here we've got 11 minus 9, so that's got float. So we can sort of see how this is evolving, that this is going to fall through here. This is showing us here 13 minus 12, there's 1 day of float. 1 day of float, and then we check this out here, 0 float, 0 float. So looking at this, the critical path is going to follow along here, and it's going to go up, and it's going to follow along there. So if we follow that through, we can see the floats being put in, and I can see that where I've got flexibility. This activity has 1 day of flexibility. You know what? I'm using small numbers here. That could be 1 week of flexibility. That could be 1 month of flexibility.
It means you can
depends
postpone
on the size of your project.
It means you can postpone because
right? Down here, we've got 2 days of flexibility. Very good tool. I know what I really need to ensure gets done. And you know, if my electrical sub, it says it's going to take a day longer, I'm not really sweating it that much because it's not going to delay my project. If my sprinkler sub says it's going to take longer, I'm going to be kind of concerned because I know that's going to be delaying my project. So different ways of interpreting the information is very, very helpful. And you'll see when we do other parts to this series, you'll see how when I need to get the time back, I look along the critical path on the rest of the project. Where can I save time to get it back? Very, very helpful to be able to do that. So those are the float calculations, and I've just cut and pasted these from that earlier slide that sort of has the rules, which is helpful. And again, you can go back and maybe look at that slide and just freeze it up and just take a look at it, and you'll get a better sense of how those calculations took place. And so as I got these floats in, you can follow through and you can see where the critical path is following on your project. So we have what? I think we've got 11 activities on this, and you can see 4, 5, 6 of them that are on the critical path and 5 of them that have float. So depending on the size of your project, sometimes it's fewer, more, less, but at least you know where it is. So it's giving you a good idea of how the project. So we have what? I think
considering my question that I give you before, for example, in this time, we have to start 1, 2, 3, 4 activities. But as I said you before, we are now haven't got enough people, enough labor. We have to. It means we have to postpone one of them, one of these activities. Which one could be postponed considering this chart? It means we could not postpone the critical one. Yes, okay. It means we have to start to the this activity to the 6th duration is the 6 week. We have to start, first of all, we have to start, we have to allocate the people to this activity, but we have it, maybe we can start with another one. On this case, which one have to be, we have to select on this case. When we evaluate the float of the total float of the project, it means you can postpone it. In this case, for example, we have the total flotation of this activity. It takes 1 week, 1 day. This one also have 1 day, but this one has 2 float days. It means if we have to, we can postpone it maybe we can select those one because the float of this activity is less than this one. Depending on the float of the activities, we can select for postpone the activities. It's very important for this kind of evaluations.
We've got 11 activities in this, and you can see there's 4, 5, 6 of them that are on the critical path and 5 of them that have float. So depending on the size of your project, sometimes it's fewer, more, less, but at least you know where it is. So it's giving you a good idea of how the critical path works, how it's calculated, and really I like to think of it as it's the underlying engine that kind of dictates how the schedule is running. You know, there's a lot of information on project management, and it's not as simple as it seems. So I'm not here to say this is the be-all to end-all. How do we know how long things are originally in our project? How do we get that sequencing right? There's some variables in there, a lot of variables. It's a tool. It's a tool that helps you figure out how to run your project. It's not the only tool. There's a lot of tools. And I like to think of something as not being wrong or necessarily right. It's a tool, and if it's used in the right way with other tools and combined with a whole bunch of interpersonal skills, soft skills, technical skills, it helps to pull together things so you can effectively manage and successfully run your project. So it's one of many things that we'll discuss in our series that helps you to better run your projects. But don't go away thinking this is it, this is the tool. It's an important tool, and you should understand how it works, and it'll help you visualize things, and it'll help you better lay out goals to meet goals. But it's not the only thing. And we'll talk about how it integrates. You know, we look at a long-term schedule, a master schedule, and how it fits in with some short-term planning, short-term look-aheads. There's in lean construction methodology. There's what we call the last planner and daily scheduling and daily huddles and weekly and monthly, and how these all integrate together in future sessions. Because I think if you start to get a better picture and understanding how there's flex and how you can move towards things, it will help you to be more successful. In part 2 of this series, I want to get into the bar chart. Most people that do any kind of project management are pretty familiar with the bar chart, and it shows the critical path. In this particular case, it's in red. I just did this quickly up based on that little schematic that I did earlier. And if you see it in Microsoft Project, it'll show you start, finish, late start, late finish. Well, start and finish, that's your forward pass. Late start, late finish, that's your backward pass. And slack, that's the same as float, and that's the difference in dates. So if you actually take some time and you look at this, these time periods are exactly the same as the float that was just calculated, and that's how the scheduling software does it. It calculates it the same way. So for example, this is Thursday for the late finish here, and for the finish over here, that's Wednesday. That's 1 working day difference. This is 2 working days difference, so that's why it's going to Tuesday. It's just the same, it's just it's using dates.
In this case, you can see the Gantt chart diagram for evaluation of the project, for project management. It means that in this case, for example, the blue ones can be postponed, considering their select time or total float in the total float of the activities. We can, if we haven't got enough resources, we could not postpone this one. Otherwise, our whole project will be delayed. But using this opportunity, we can postpone this one, and the other one, the third one. It will be easy for if there is a limitation on the basis of our resources. It will be helpful for make decision for project managers. It's very important. It's very important. First of all, you have to determine the critical path of your project. Then you have to calculate the select time of the events or activities, total float of the activities. You have to calculate this kind of things. Then you can use the select time of the activities for selected the critical one or postpone the activities. You have to calculate the early starting time of activities, early finish time of the activities, early finish time of the whole project, early starting time of the project. Then you have to make calculation backward pass. You have to determine the latest starting and latest finish time of the activities. Then you at the end of these analysis, you have to calculate the float time and the critical. If the float time of the activities are 0, it means those kind of activities are critical ones. Then you could not postpone this kind of activities.
I was just using durations with it. Schedules is when we get into actually using dates and scheduling dates. Planning is where we're kind of looking at all the things that we need to do, and we're trying to gather a plan and trying to figure out our best approach to it. Scheduling, you're actually putting dates and commitments to it. This is just running it through on an actual bar chart. People like bar charts because it's linear. The longer the bar is, the more days, and it's kind of very more intuitive that way. Modern software has tied the best of both, the bar chart and the critical path method. I mentioned that the Hoover Dam was built with bar charts, and it didn't have all these connections and calculations for critical path, but it did have the bars. The downside of that was it was hard to update, and it was hard to see the impacts on the overall project, whereas critical path is taking that network diagram, you can gather that information through the bar chart, and whenever you're using a scheduling software, there is a network diagram that's been made, and we'll look at that in the next session. So part 2, what I would call the engine, which is how this is actually driving our project and how we use it today, but it's fundamentally what's underneath it. So please, if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're building this community of points in the area of business management, project management, and personal development. So hopefully over time we'll have a really good library of stuff, and I can only get better with comments from you and having enough.
Yes, I think it was helpful. I'd like to thank you for your patience. It's very important for project management, especially for determining the project investment implementation time suitable. It will be helpful for us. It means you have to use some expert knowledge. It's very important for us. You have to know what's it mean event, what's it mean event, and activities. Event, activity. And you have to learn something. You have to know the relation between the activities. Which one is the predecessor? Which one the successful? For example, in this case, this is the arrow. It's not the dimension of the arrow is not so important, but it's very important for orientation of the project. For example, those activities A, B, C are activities, procedure activities of the D. Those 3 ones have to be finished, or otherwise we could not start to the D1. It's very important though. In some cases, we can use circle and arrows. For example, event G. Realized. This is the direction of the activity. this is an activity EG. We can demonstrate like this. It will be helpful. Maybe next week I'm going to give you a more simple one, calculation of this system, maybe using this opportunity. But I think it was helpful for understand the system. It's very important for determining. We are going to, for example, we are going to start a project. We are going to arrange a hotel. We would like to establish a construction of the hotel. The boss would like to know what will be the latest time of the project, the latest finish time of the project. We have to learn, for example, what will be the earliest finish time of the project, latest finish time of the project. What will be the if we haven't got enough resources, what will be the earliest time, what will be the latest time of the finish time of the project under the limitation of the source resources. What will be the cost of the project, for example? How long we can our project could be delayed, considering the resource requirements, etc. It will be the further analyzing of the project management system. As I said you before, we have a few project management softwares dealing the matter, but you have to take some courses. This kind of courses takes more than 4 months. Maybe you have to take a certificate. It will be helpful for your professional life. It will be helpful for your technical officials of the projects. I think it will be enough today. I'd like to thank you for your patience. I hope next week I'm going to summarize the concept in order to understand the system. Thank you very much for your patience. Take care of you. See you next week. Goodbye.